Hey there, folks. As my first guest, I have Naomi Wolf on to talk about the upcoming mayoral election. Now, I want to be real clear. Anything that anyone can do to stop Mamdani from being elected, I would say do, including voting for anybody but Mamdani. Up until recently, people were saying Curtis Sliwa might drop out, and I would tell everybody to vote for Cuomo. But you know what? Cuomo's a bum, let's be clear. And in a head-to-head race, Cuomo loses. If you put head-to-head Cuomo versus Mamdani versus Sliwa versus Mamdani, Sliwa does way better. And I also know that Sliwa is not going to drop out. I can't go into why, but since he's not going to drop out, I'm telling everyone, please, please vote for Curtis Sliwa. He's an American hero. I know him personally. And we've got to stop Mamdani. God bless you. Hey there, folks. Does something look different? Do I look different? It's a new wig. It's a new look. This is the inaugural episode of my new show. I think it's called the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm going to have to check with Eric Metaxas to see if they'll let us use his name. But this is the inaugural episode. In a few minutes, I believe my inaugural guest will be Naomi Wolf, my Yale classmate, of whom I'm very fond, an amazing hero in our time. We'll be talking to her about the upcoming mayoral election here in New York City. But also with me in studio is my producer, Chris Himes. Chris, this is the inaugural episode. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. This is very exciting. It kind of feels like we're in your apartment.
Well, close enough. We're in a bunker. But this is in fact the inaugural episode of the show. How's this show going to differ? Well, first of all, it's not a radio program. This is a podcast. I think the most important thing I want to say is that we've got a new look. Do you see the new look?
Yeah.
And the new look, I'm part of the new look. I mentioned a new wig. I thought, you know what? Let's freshen things up. And so this is an Army surplus horsehair wig, which I thought, if you use the right fixative, if it fits reasonably well, it's worth using. And so I hope it looks good.
It looks tremendous, and part of the upside with Trump and his tariff things, we're able to get this horsehair from countries that were previously banned for different reasons. So this is very exotic.
That's right. The horse whose hair I'm wearing on my head was once grazing on the pampas of Argentina, and I have to say it's just exciting. It's exciting. If a horse is going to die, I say, you make lemonade.
Yeah.
So Chris,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, this was all very exciting. This is all new for us.
Before we go forward, I want to say, folks, this is actually important. As you know, for 10 years, I had a radio show and a podcast. It was on the Salem Radio Network. Salem is a great company, but for a number of reasons, we had to part ways. I'm not going to use the word embezzlement, but anything is possible. But I guess the point of my saying this is that there are a lot of people that used to listen to this program. They just turn on the radio in their car when they pick up the kids or whatever. That can't happen anymore. So it's very important for you, if you would, I'd be very grateful to you, frankly, if you help get the word out. If you tell folks to subscribe to this YouTube channel. We will be dropping a show at some point. It will be every day at the same time. For now, it'll be every other day. As you know, I'm working very hard on my book on the American Revolution. The title will be Revolution. And I look forward to talking about that in the weeks and months ahead. Very, very exciting. But would you do us a favor and spread the word about this show? It's always difficult because people have ways of listening. They have patterns, and suddenly they think, well, what happened to Eric? Where's Eric? Where'd he go? and many of them will not know how to find us. I have,
Yeah, and I would say since it's there'll be a new podcast link as well. The old podcast link will be frozen in time, like the Chevys of the Cuban Revolution in Havana. They won't get any newer. So you're going to need to, if you just look up the Eric Metaxas Show on Spotify or anywhere that podcasts or fed into feeds, it should pop up as the Eric Metaxas Show.
just like those Cuban Chevys, ladies and gentlemen. Please write that down. So yes, obviously you can still listen to this on podcast, but if you would do me a favor, if you like me or you like the show, please help spread the word. It's really important, especially at this juncture. Getting started, it's just much easier as things go along. But in the beginning, it's tough. I also want to say, I can't say too much right now, but we have a number of sponsors, and I want to say, if I have a sponsor on this program, I want to help that sponsor. It's somebody I believe in. Number one, my friend Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell is an American hero. A lot of people don't know the details of it. I know some of those details. He's an American hero. He's the man behind MyPillow.com and MyStore.com. And I want to say, if you want to help this program, you can do so by shopping at MyPillow.com and MyStore.com and using the code ERIC. I think a lot of times I have been shy about, saying, oh, we need your help, or we want your help. We really do. But the joy for me is that you're also helping Mike Lindell, who continues to be embattled because there are people that, they don't want us to have free and fair elections. Bad people. So you're effectively voting with your dollars and cents when you go to MyPillow.com or MyStore.com, and especially when you use the code ERIC. Since today's our inaugural program, we're hoping to have Naomi Wolf as our first guest.
There's an election coming up.
Well, there's a couple of things. There's an election coming up, but I want to say that my first guest on the radio show 10 years ago, I thought, who can we get as my first guest? And then I realized when we started that show 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, what was the starting date that Salem gave me to start? April 20th. Having written a 600-page book on Dietrich Bonhoeffer, I just happened to know that April 20th is Hitler's birthday. And I thought, you know what? If you're going to force me to start my show on Hitler's birthday, I'm going to have to hit back hard. How can I do this? Aha! I know. I had as my first guest Dame Alice von Hildebrandt, a friend. She was about 90 years old at that time. And the reason I wanted to have her on, she's the widow of Dietrich von Hildebrandt, who was Hitler's number one enemy in Austria. Absolutely a dedicated anti-Hitler, anti-Nazi Christian man, Dietrich von Hildebrandt. And so what an extraordinary thing as my first guest on that program 10 years ago to have his widow, because, as I think I mentioned, it was Hitler's birthday. So I thought we need to start on the right foot. So today, I think we're going to be able to get Naomi Wolf. Now, Naomi, I can say this before I bring her on the program. She's a hero for many reasons. And she's my first guest for many reasons. Number one, she has bravely stood against the oppressive forces that insisted we have to get a vaccine before we know what's in it. It's like you got to pass the bill before you know what's in it. Just trust us. We're the globalist elites that want to crush you into the dust. So just trust us. She stood against that bravely and actually came on this program early in 2021. I believe it was April 2021, to talk about, maybe it was even before that, but to talk about vaccine passports and to speak against that. And because of that, folks, because I had her on as a guest on the show to talk about this, YouTube, where you're probably listening to me right now, decided to cancel the program on YouTube. So it was a huge hit for us financially and in every other way because the forces of oppression and censorship, the forces that do not believe in free speech or liberty, who are fundamentally anti-American, had the power to do that. And they did that specifically because I dared to have on as my guest Naomi Wolf, who dared to speak about whether it was a good idea for to have vaccine passports, what was in the vaccines, and on and on and on. Because she dared to ask those questions and to speak about that, because I dared to have her on as a guest, they thought, well, we'll punish you. And so I thought, how fitting to have her on as my first guest. Before we go to Naomi, let me remind you that 2026 is our supercentennial. It's the 250th anniversary of the birth of the United States of America. It is by fiat being called the supercentennial. We are celebrating our supercentennial. We've got a lot of supercentennial celebrations that we're going to be doing on this program. I'm going to have a supercentennial hotline where we take your supercentennial phone calls. We'll be unveiling that in the weeks ahead. But we've got a lot of exciting supercentennial stuff. We're doing a supercentennial series for Socrates in the City, 13 episodes about the founding of the nation, about the revolution, and all kinds of stuff. So go to ericmetaxas.com, sign up for my newsletter, please. And again, please tell your friends about the program. So I'm going to wrap this up right now because our guest, fresh from Steve Bannon, is coming on this program. Naomi Wolf will be right back. You know, a lot of people have been asking lately, how can we bless Israel? Well, my friends at Artza Box have found a beautiful, tangible way to do exactly that. Every Artza Box is filled with handcrafted treasures from the land where Jesus walked.
Like a hope necklace with the Star of David and the map of Israel, delicious Israeli spices and recipes, and a ceramic dish made by a group on the Gaza border that employs youth with disabilities and so much more. They're only selling this box for 6 more days, and it's almost sold out. And right now you can get 15% off with code Metaxas. So if you're a Christian who loves Israel, or you know someone who does, this is the perfect way to experience and share the beauty, faith, and hope of the Holy Land. Go to artsabox.com/Metaxas and get yours today.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I warned you that Naomi Wolf would be my first guest. I told you why. I won't tell Naomi because since she's on late, she missed it. So Naomi, we are so excited to have you as our first guest on this new program. No kidding. Thank you so much.
Oh, what an honor. And thank you. And I do apologize that I was late. There's no excuse, but thank you for giving me the chance.
There's only one excuse. I was doing Bannon. That's it. I'm done. We don't need to talk about it. You and I have a few things in common. My audience will know some of that. We were both in the same class at Yale. Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury, also in that class. Kind of interesting that the three of us, who are in some ways coming from very, very different places, would end up thinking that this administration is a good thing. Of course, Scott is in the administration. But right now, what you and I have in common that we don't have in common with Scott is that we are New Yorkers. And there is it next week? I cannot fathom next week that we have an election for the mayor of New York. You and I have both been vocal, you much more so than I, about the stakes involved. Let me just say, before I finally let you talk, that I would have done anything to prevent Mamdani from being mayor, including voting for somebody that I think horrible, which is to say Andrew Cuomo. And I've now come around to believe that because Curtis Sliwa refuses to drop out, everybody needs to vote for Curtis Sliwa, and Cuomo should drop out. At least that's where I stand right now. But what are your thoughts?
Well, first, I definitely agree that all eyes should be on New York and that this is the most consequential, mayoral election, certainly of our lifetime, but kind of in its own way as consequential as a presidential election, I would say, because of the way it could be a bellwether for other cities, for the fall of other cities. I mean, just, looking at strategy and warfare and history, it's like if Constantinople falls, everything else follows. If Rome falls, everything else follows, when you've got an empire. And of course, New York, DC is our capital, but New York is the center of the American empire. So it's falling, I also was incredibly struck and was asking on social media for days, where are the head-to-head polls? All the legacy media were saying, Sliwa, drop out, step aside. It's our only hope. Cuomo's way ahead. You have no chance. And then they finally did a head-to-head poll, and it turns out that Sliwa's ahead of Cuomo in a head-to-head against Mamdani, and that there's only 9 points separating them. 4 is the margin of error. So really, he's only 5 points behind, arguably, Mamdani, whereas he was 2 points ahead of Cuomo in a head-to-head with Mamdani. So I think Cuomo should step aside. I think
so we agree. We agree on this. Cuomo should step aside, and Bill Ackman should be a man. If you're a billionaire, I can talk to you roughly because I'm not a billionaire. Don't expect to be in this lifetime. So, hey, Ackman, you were for many years funding Harvard and their satanic, anti-Semitic, woke, lunatic agenda. So it's possible that maybe you get stuff wrong, and maybe you're getting this wrong.
Yeah.
I believe you're a good man, and you need to read the handwriting on the wall. By the way, that's a reference from an Old Testament book. And you need to understand that what we're looking at right now, and Naomi has written about this extraordinarily well,
thank you,
is the end of many things. And Bill Ackman and John Katsimatidis, my fellow Greek, so I can criticize Jews and Greeks on this program equally.
You could criticize anyone.
There is neither Jew nor Greek in the New Covenant, so I can take my fellow Greek billionaires to task and my Jewish billionaires friends to task. You need to ask Cuomo now to drop out. And if you don't, John and Bill, you will be guilty and we will hold you accountable when Mamdani is, beheading Gentiles in Times Square. I'll just leave it on that histrionic note. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Disclosure, I and my company Daily Cloud have been helping a really wonderful candidate named Athena Clark, who's running for city council in New York as a Republican from Brooklyn. And having disclosed that, it means that I have a kind of insider's view of the ground game for Republicans in New York and in Brooklyn. And the legacy, the kind of establishment Republicans have been AWOL. They have left Sliwa to campaign, on fumes, even though he's bringing in a tremendous amount of grassroots money, right? But the big outsider money, didn't come to him via the RNC pipeline. The down ballot candidates like Athena Clark, Elijah Diaz, this extraordinary array, you met some of them, of and I've been writing about them, of Republican grassroots candidates, many of them Black and Hispanic young people, I would have thought as a former Democratic consultant, this is a story made for a national audience. We're going to get behind them. It's like the manufacture of AOC or the manufacture of Hakeem Jeffries, from a Democrat point of view. And these are actually talented people, but they haven't had that embrace from the national Republicans or from the Republican establishment. And so then I've been seeing like a non-fight. It's almost like the Republicans, the establishment Republicans consigned New York, said it's just not winnable. It is winnable. Like look at New Jersey. I don't know the latest news, but New Jersey was trending red. Last time I checked, the whole country trended red, in places you didn't expect it to elect President Trump. And these are not normal times. And this candidate, Mamdani, is not a normal Democrat. And the other Democrats that have been put up, notably Cuomo as well as Adams, are flawed. Cuomo oversaw lockdowns and granny killing and insane.
Even the way you say it, granny killing. It's like people talk about organ harvesting. Ladies and gentlemen, do you understand what we're talking about here? Do you understand how wicked this is? This is not some policy difference. This is wicked. This is absolutely wicked. What Cuomo did was unprecedentedly wicked. In fact, so evil that when I first heard about it, I refused to believe it. I said, no, no one would actually do that. He did that. And that's only perhaps the worst thing that he did. He did many other bad things. If you vote for a Democrat in New York, you're voting at this point for trouble. This is not Ed Koch you're voting for. This is very, very bad. And Naomi, when you said, perhaps the most consequential mayoral election, without a doubt, the most consequential. There is nothing to compare to this. And we have to say, Curtis Sliwa is a hero. I know him. I've had him on this program before. When you hear his story, it's almost unbelievable. It is the New York story. He's like a New York folk hero, what he has done. Most people don't know that he was so brave and outspoken against the corruption of the New York mafia that Al Gotti tried to have him murdered and pumped 5 or 6 bullets into his body, and he survived. He told that
oh my gosh
program. See, you don't even know it. He's done a very bad job of getting this out. He was basically calling out the Gottis on the radio, and if you don't know this, that tells the story. He's done a very bad job of getting this story out. He's an absolute astonishing hero. So he spoke bravely. He knew the Gottis were threatening him, but this is the guy who founded the Guardian Angels in the late 70s because crime was through the roof in New York. So he decides to get groups together to defend the innocents on the subway. He gets a radio program. He then goes on that program for years. He's on the program, and he starts calling out the Gottis for their corruption. I mean, these are evil people.
Oh my God.
And they threatened him, and he continued to speak out. One day, on his way to the radio program, he would normally hail a cab to go to WABC, I guess, where he was going, or WOR, I don't remember which, but he goes to get a cab. Well, this is what the mafia does. If they want to murder you, they pick you up in a taxi cab. You get into the cab. When you're in the cab, you realize that the door handles have been sawed off. You can't get out of the cab. This is what happened to Curtis. The guy in the front turns around, fires at him, gets him. Curtis. Yeah, I can't believe you haven't heard this. This is amazing.
He doesn't tell this story.
How terrible that he hasn't told the story. How crazy he hasn't told the story. So yeah, when he told the story on my program at least once, and so he manages to kick out the windows and escape and survive. He survived. Yeah, exactly. It's unbelievable heroism. What a story. I believe he survived, to quote another New Testament book, for such a time as this, that he would be the greatest mayor. New York. I mean, he's the most New York. I'm sitting in a chair, by the way, that was decorated by Mayor Giuliani for I guess it was for an auction to raise money or whatever. And so I got this chair. I'm sitting on this chair, and I'm thinking the greatest mayor we have ever had by far was Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Whom does Rudy Giuliani endorse in this election?
Totally.
He endorses our friend Curtis Sliwa. So, folks, if you know anybody who lives in New York, or you know anybody who knows anybody who lives in New York, I beg you to get the word out to vote for Curtis Sliwa. Hey there, folks. All across America, something is stirring, a hunger for truth, for scripture, for the story of Jesus. And this November, you can experience that story on the big screen. From CBN Films and Fathom Entertainment comes Oracles of God, the story of the New Testament. A powerful new documentary reveals how the Gospels and letters of the New Testament were first written, preserved, and passed down to us, the most influential book in history. Directed by 4-time Emmy nominee Aaron Zimmerman, Oracles of God brings history and faith together through stunning visuals, expert insight, and the extraordinary story of how God's Word survived and changed the world. Don't miss this exclusive Fathom event, November 2nd, 3rd, and 5th only in select theaters nationwide. Visit fathomevents.com to find a theater near you. Get your tickets today. Before the Bible was bound, truth was written. Visit fathomevents.com.
I mean, unless Cuomo steps aside, it's going to be a very, very tough fight, even if every single Sliwa supporter comes out. And by the way, if Cuomo steps aside, and I agree Ackman should be pressuring him to step aside, he is flawed. And 52% of the voters are women. We haven't even talked about the sexual allegations against him, which to me are so, and I'm a feminist, so like they're not nothing, but they're not significant compared with shutting down unlawfully, unconstitutionally, the commerce and freedom of a whole city for over a year and bringing people infected with COVID into elder care homes, which if people, are not familiar with the story, they need to be reminded that's what he did so that the old people would die with COVID so that he could say there was a COVID pandemic. I mean, this guy is gruesome. In addition to that, in my book, The Bodies of Others, I tracked how he forbade anyone from burying coffins in cemeteries. So dead people stacked up in funeral homes. So he could send New York Times reporters to the funeral homes and report on the cadavers stacked up to the wall. I mean, it was so evil. He created that appearance that there was, people dropping dead everywhere. He was manipulating the situation to justify locking us down, forever. And then, take the vaccine. It's the only way out. That was under his watch. Now they want to recycle him as, the leader of this great city. But now let me talk, if I may, about Mamdani and why it's so serious. Mamdani, I hate to have reached this conclusion because I, studied Islam. I've traveled in Muslim countries. I loved it. I love many Muslim people. I think Islam is not innately I think it's innately a very kind of peaceful religion, one of the Abrahamic religions. So I am not an Islamophobe. However, I had to reach the conclusion, which I did in my most recent essay, The Green Red Revolution, on Substack and Daily Clout, that Mamdani is actually a beachhead for a wave of fundamentalist Islamic militancy that's being deployed against the West to take the place of the threat represented by the CCP and the globalists for the last 4 years. In other words, enough Westerners have woken up to the nefarious goals of that cabal that I described. We've talked about it a lot. The World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Chinese Communist Party, directing its efforts and big tech against the West in the ways that we've talked about: unrestricted warfare, poisoning us with the mRNA injection, locking us down, as I mentioned, buying up our water supplies, buying up our farmland, influencing curricula in universities, buying up local and national officials. Enough people have woken up to that I think the globalists have had to switch mercenaries. And now they're using, you see this in Britain, and we have friends in Britain, even more than in the United States, but you see it in places like Michigan, radical Islam, not everyday moderate Muslims who just want to, raise their families and become British or become American, but radical, hardcore, like rural tribalist values. Women are chattel, it's okay to marry 9-year-olds. It's okay to, clitoridectomies are fine. Like, they are the advance guards. And so what I've been seeing with Mamdani, Qatar is funding his mom. $15 million of Qatari money went to his mother, Mira Nair, who's obviously, I think a force, in what's going on. But
this is like, again, also the film The Manchurian Candidate. Angela Lansbury's role as the mother of the Manchurian Candidate. I mean, when you think about Mamdani's mother, because he's 33 years old, he's a child practically. I mean, the idea that he could be the mayor of the city, just on that, he would be disqualified. He said innumerable things that are disqualifying. Now, you've written about this in that essay. The website, Daily Clout, C-L-O-U-T, Clout, dailyclout.io.
Like Indian Ocean. Yes.
Daily
.com was taken.
.io. Folks, I sent this essay to a loved one last night after I read it.
Well,
It says everything. And Naomi, I'm in awe of your writing, not least because the length of your pieces. They're not too long, but boy, you really get into the details of it. And what you're describing, I just want to say, speaking as a Christian, I can't say that I'm okay with Islam, but the point that Naomi's making is that there are plenty of people who would say, "Oh, I'm a Muslim. I've met them. Okay. I know these people. They live in New York." Basically, they're Americans who love America. They're not going along with this radical program. So they are not devoted to the idea that we want to destroy the West. We want Sharia law. They're not devoted to it. So they're just kind of going along. Most of them are not very good Muslims. Like when you meet people say, "I'm a Catholic," and you go to church twice a year. Okay.
Right.
So you're
Right.
kind of tribalistically, you say you're Catholic, but there are tons of those kinds of Muslims. What we're talking about, what Naomi writes about, is people who are dedicated to destroying the West. And I don't think you say it, or maybe you do say it in your essay, Naomi, but look, they have done it in Paris and London. The next logical step is New York. New York is the kind of city where you could pull this off. And I think you're right that Mamdani is the stalking horse for this movement, which wants to land on our shores, which 25 years ago murdered 3,000 innocent Americans. It's a harsh, horrible thing to say, but it's even worse that it's true.
Well, you've said it very eloquently, and the heart of my essay is a long excerpt from someone named Wajid Akhtar, who is a very popular commentator, and it was from a report on the new British leadership, the new British Muslim leadership. And what people have to understand about Britain is that probably a dozen major British cities are now run by Islamists, not just Muslims, but Islamists, and elected by Islamists. And so what do Islamists want? Well, this report by a policy organization just lifted actual speeches that are not being made on the BBC, but that are being made in Arabic to an Islamist audience. And what they're calling for is very, very, very scary. And it's not what they call for in public or in English, right? And what they're calling for is basically the victory of Saladin. And they reference history a great deal, and a reversal of the defeat in 15th century Spain by Roman Catholicism and by Ferdinand and Isabella. In other words, Islam, people have to remember their history. Islam has been a conquest religion since its founding, and it had centuries of conquering Europe, conquering the Middle East, conquering Israel and Jerusalem. And then the Crusades, the first, second, and third Crusade, had to happen because Christianity tried to reconquer those lands back, but especially reconquer Jerusalem, which is where, your Messiah, it was laid to rest, where the tomb of the Holy Sepulchre is, where Jesus was buried and rose. So that's what the Crusades were for. People have forgotten, the Crusades were against Islam, right? Muslim military conquest. Also, people have forgotten that on the Iberian Peninsula, I mean, it's quite beautiful, their legacy, but Islam had a caliphate, in Europe, in Spain, that had a golden age in the 15th century and up to the 15th century, but also, isn't is historically kind of just a few beats behind us, right? It's not like Islam has always been just happening in mosques. Is what Islam has had since its beginning, a political and militant driving force of conquering territory for Allah. So and they're calling for a new Saladin, and Saladin again beat back the Crusades, meaning beat back the Christians and reconquered Jerusalem. So what I see as a former political consultant in the last couple of weeks, especially Zoran Mamdani claiming to be a Marxist, but also supporting things this is really weird, Eric, supporting a lot of policies that are really haram, meaning forbidden in Islam, like sex trafficking, prostitution, zina, haram, forbidden. It's like, illicit sexual activity, supporting drag queens. The idea, it's interesting. Islam codifies the differences between two genders and basically says that's it. Nothing else is acceptable. Supporting the LGBT community. I too support gay and lesbian rights, of course, but that's haram in Islam. And you didn't hear a peep from Muslim leaders about this, right? Well, I'm getting there. I think it's because in the last 2 weeks, you've seen this bizarre escalation of symbolism aimed at re-traumatizing the West from a militant Muslim perspective, from Zoran Mamdani. So he takes pictures with Hassan Piker, who said America deserved 9/11. And Piker was at the big rally they had, I think, in Madison Square Garden yesterday. He didn't disavow him. He didn't say, no, I don't want to be seen with this guy. That was a mistake. No. You have another photograph for no reason with the imam in Bed-Stuy, who was a character witness for the terrorist who was involved with the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993. Why? No reason. You don't need that imam, right? There's no political reason. You need that imam if your focus is on winning. And lastly, he gave a whole bizarre press conference, which should be laughable unless you are reading my essay and understanding the point I'm making, in which he basically said the real victim of 9/11 was his aunt, who felt bad about wearing a hijab on the New York City subway. She was afraid of getting mean looks, so she stopped using the subway. Well, it turns out that his aunt is an NGO specialist from Tanzania who doesn't wear a hijab in her bio pictures at all, and wasn't in New York after 9/11, according to her bio, and specializes in reproductive rights. Actually, it's interesting. His aunt has a real MI5 kind of bio. It's a very spooky intel bio. But leaving that aside, he does this whole thing designed to upset New Yorkers, to traumatize New Yorkers. All those 3,000 people, this whole city, those two, massive buildings, the other buildings, they don't count. My Muslim aunt counts.
My
right?
fictional Muslim aunt
There's no
wearing
reason
a
for that.
hijab on the subway. I would give her a dirty look just for wearing a hijab, just because, sometimes I am nonplussed by people wearing things like hijabs on the subway. But I got to tell you, Naomi, what we're talking about here, these people, let's face it, he needs the Jew-hating vote to win this election. I've never seen anything like
Interesting.
He is going out of his way.
Right.
He has gone out of his way not to offend open Jew haters. He has gone
And
out
that's
of his
interesting.
way when he was asked point blank, would you distance yourself from the phrase globalize the intifada? He absolutely would not. He's a snake. I don't say this thing lightly. I think he is about as wicked a figure as we have ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen anyone as nefarious, as wicked as Mamdani. He's frightening. And I think that whatever happens next week, I mean, we have to be clear. He's a Ugandan citizen, ladies and gentlemen.
He's still a Ugandan citizen. And Eric, it took him 11 adult years in the United States, educated in the United States, before he even bothered to apply for citizenship. And I believe that's because there's a 12-year window before which you can no longer apply. 11 years he hung out here merrily taking in all the benefits that we give him, including a free, excellent private school education, and didn't bother becoming a citizen until he absolutely had to for 11 adult years. I don't blame him when he was a child, but I do blame his parents. They didn't become citizens. They merrily, live and teach in America, raised a family in America, didn't bother becoming citizens. And now he's running to represent our great city of New York. He's still a Ugandan citizen. They wanted to execute gay people, and now they just imprison them for 10 years for gay sex. And he's not.
Think about this, folks. In Uganda, they will murder you for being gay. Now, I just want to be on the record.
Totally.
I'm against that policy. Most people I know are against that policy. Most people think that that's almost unbelievable, that they would murder you. In Uganda, he has not disavowed his Ugandan citizenship. So here you have a mayor. I mean, actually, this should be against our Constitution, that if you want to run for public office, you cannot be the citizen of another nation. If you want to be a citizen of a nation, great, dual citizen, great, but not if you're running for office where you're expected to represent certain people who, in New York, right, for example, would think that you would put New York first before Kuala Lumpur or some other city. So that's kind of where we are with Mamdani. It's staggering. Yeah. You've only got
it's staggering.
Minutes left, Naomi. Please, anything you want to say, we'll have you back as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you. No, I was just going to say, to wrap up my rant about why is he needlessly sending out all this messaging about 9/11, I thought it was a humiliation ritual, you know, the kind of Saladinist humiliation ritual of the West. But I think you've said something I didn't even think about, and I hate to think it as a Jew, but it resonates. I think you're right. I think he is cultivating the Jew-hating vote. He is. And I think there was a poll that said 26% of people, it didn't say Jews specifically, that we aren't 26%, but, I'm sure a lot of Jews were in there, would consider leaving the city if Mamdani is elected. I think it's going to become very ugly for Jews in New York City or Israelis or people who are supportive of, even a two-state solution if he is elected. I think you're right. I think he is cultivating the Jew-hating vote. And if that succeeds, there are very bad times ahead for America.
Well, Bill Ackman has to ask Cuomo, and John Catsimatidis has to ask, since you're billionaires, I'm not going to speak to you respectfully, okay? You have a lot of power, a lot of money. You need to throw it around in the right way. We have days left. The head-to-head polls have now been revealed. It is pretty clear the path forward so that the king of the Jew haters, Mamdani, is not elected. If you care about that, you know what you need to do. Naomi, great to have you. I want people to go to your website, dailyclout.io. Dailyclout.io. Send this essay around. We're living in dark times. A lot more to talk about another time, Naomi. Just grateful to have you as my first guest on this new program. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And just before I go, if I may, even people who don't live in New York can support Curtis Sliwa or support down ballot Republicans or whoever they want to by donating to them, even at this point.
Please do, folks. This is for all the marbles. This Christmas, as we celebrate the Super Centennial coming up, Super Centennial 250th, there's no way, better way to support it than by supporting my friend, an American hero, Mike Lindell. He's one of the main sponsors on this program. He's the man behind My Pillow. He put his money where his mouth is. Some of you know this if you've watched the program. He stood up for the country. He was unfairly canceled by the big box stores. So I want us to stand with him. So please go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code ERIC to save big on pillows, sheets, slippers, everything you need for Christmas comfort. You'll sleep great, save big, celebrate freedom with My Pillow. Mypillow.com. Use the code ERIC.